الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, after a short absence we're back with the Qur'an class. Unfortunately this will be the last class before Ramadan, but hopefully inshallah we can do a good recap session on everything that we've covered up until now, and also cover a few more rules bi'idhnillah ta'ala, and also 2 more surahs bi'idhnillah. So to start off with, inshallah, it's very important for us to do a recap, because again, like I mentioned, this will be the last session before Ramadan, so it's important that we revise what we have covered so far. So I have a couple of questions, inshallah, that I want to ask and see hopefully the audience can engage with me bi'idhnillah ta'ala. The first question that I have is, what are the heavy letters in the Arabic language? Brother said 6 letters. Anyone differ with him? Khussa, daghtin, qidh. So how many letters? 7 letters, mashallah, tabarakallah. Okay. When is the letter Ra light? Okay. Give me one scenario. Okay, when there's a kasra on it. Any other time? Okay, good. If the previous letter has a kasra. Okay, does anyone want to complete that rule? If it has a kasra before, is there anything else that we do? So for example, if it has a sakin and before there's a kasra, we have to do one extra step. What is that? Check the letter after. So what do we do? If the letter after is heavy, then the ra will be heavy. If the letter after is light, the ra will be light. Fantastic. Okay, any other situations? No? Okay. I think that's what we've covered so far. And like I've mentioned to you guys, that there are exceptions to the rule that we didn't cover. Of course, you need to learn the Arabic language for that. طيب, the next question is, are all the qalqala letters treated the same? Meaning, do we do qalqala, do we bounce on these letters the same way? Yeah? Brother said yes. Yeah. Good, that's dividing the qalqalas. What if we, the qalqalas, of course, we've got how many letters of qalqala? 5, right? Qaf, ta, ba, jim, and dal, right? Okay. So if I'm doing qalqala and, for example, the qaf, is it going to be the same as me doing qalqala and the letter dal? What's the difference? Don't worry, it's fresh, that's why. Okay, good bouncing. But remember, if it's a heavy letter, you have to prepare for the heavy letter. So, iqra, what do? You make your mouth into an oval shape. But if it's a light letter, what do? You excellent, you smile. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. So there's a difference in sound. Okay. طيب, now more of the practical side. These are the theoretical side to it. 3 questions. First question, Surah An-Nas, verse 4. Okay? And that's min sharril waswasil khannas. Some of the common mistakes we've covered in this verse. What are they? I'm making you guys the teachers now. Yeah. Good, very good. That's the most important one. Making the ra heavy. People say what? Min sharri. What is it? Sharri. Good. Anything else? Hassan, very good, mashallah. We haven't covered the rule yet, but we mentioned the application of it is min sharri. We stretch it out. Okay, excellent. Moving on to the next verse, Surah Al-Fatiha, verse 2. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. What are the common mistakes? Alif and Lam? Good, okay. Ahsant, very good. Very good, mashallah. Anything else? Who remembers Ar-Rahman? What's the mistake? Making the alif heavy, right? So we don't say Ar-Rahman, what do we say? As stays how it is. It's the ra that's heavy, not the alif. Fantastic. Okay, and the last one, Surah Al-Falaq, the last verse. What's the last verse? Min sharri hasidin idha hasad. Again, common mistake. Sharri, isn't it? Sharri. Hasidin idha, and not hasidina idha. Not making it a bouncing sound. Fantastic. Okay, so the recap of what we have done so far, and bi'idhnillah ta'ala we'll go straight into it. Today we have an interesting lesson, inshallah. Just mention, of course, in the last session, for those that weren't here, it wasn't last week, the week before, we covered 2 rules, the rule of qalqala and the rule of hams. Okay, and the way we've structured it is we're covering the rules that are pertaining to sakin, isn't it? The letters that have sakin on it. So today we move on to the rules of noon, sakin, and tanween. Rules of noon, sakin, and tanween are very important. In fact, some of the tajweed books, you'll see that they start with this rule, right? They start with this rule. A famous poem that when you take up ijaza and the ustads make you memorize is called Tuhfatul Atfal, okay? A gift for children. It's a poem that you memorize. And the first rule that you cover after the introduction is لِلنُّونِ إِن تَسْكُنْ وَلِلتَّنْوِينِ أَرْبَعُ أَحْكَامٍ فَخُذْ تَبِينِ. It's in the poetry, it talks about noon, sakin rules and tanween rules, right? Okay? طيب, the rules of noon, sakin, and tanween. We're going to break it down, inshallah. The first thing that we need to understand is what is a noon, sakin? It's there. It's in the name, noon, sakin. It's a noon with a sakin on top. But I've mentioned something here. I've said that a noon, sakin is a noon with no short vowels or with a sukoon sign on it. Why did I say with no short vowels? Because in some masahif, of course everyone reads in different mushafs, whichever one you're most comfortable with, you're going to find that you sometimes won't even find the sakin. It'll be nothing on it, right? If you find nothing on it, it's an indication that it's a sakin, okay? So this is a tip for you all if you're reading from that specific type of mushaf. So if you see a noon with a sakin on, this is called a noon sakin. طيب. Then we have something known as tanween. And we covered the tanween when we covered the different types of short vowels. A tanween is when a letter has double fatha, double kasra, or double dhamma, right? So it's fathatan, kasratan, or dhammatan, okay? It either has two fathas, two kasras, or two dhammas. Now, the sound that's been made on the tanween, what is it? It's the same as the noon sakin. So you will say an, in, un. Right? So if I say an, in, un right now, in your head you probably think, okay, there's a noon there with a sakin. But in reality, I might be saying an with double fatha, double kasra, double dhamma. Like, what's the main difference between the two? This is something that people may not know. Okay? A noon sakin is part of the word, whereas tanween is not part of the word. I'm going to show you examples for you to understand. We read in Surah Al-Fatiha, صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ. Is there a noon sakin there? Yeah, noon with a sakin. An'amta. If I was to get rid of that noon sakin, will the meaning stand? If I said a'amta, khalas. Because the noon sakin is what? A part of the word. You can't get rid of it. It needs to be pronounced. Okay, now I'm going to give you an example of a tanween. How do I say in Arabic a door? Does anyone know? Bab. Bab. Okay? Al-bab means the door, and bab means a door. Now this here, I can say babun with double dhamma, or baban with double fatha, or babin with double kasra. Will it change the meaning? The meaning still stands. Like, when does it come as double fatha, double kasra? This is a grammatical change. It's a what? Grammatical change. That's all it is. Right? So it makes a word indefinite, firstly, a door, and secondly, it's what? It's just there for what reason? As I just mentioned, that it's there because it's indefinite. Ba-ban, ba-bun, and ba-bin. Okay? And the sound that you make is what? The same as the noon sakin. So the biggest difference is one is a part of the word, the other is not a part of the word. If I get rid of double fatha, double kasra, double dhamma, and I just said bab, I have not changed the meaning. Do you understand? So have you seen the difference between the two? Okay, why do scholars bring the noon sakin and tanween together then? Is because the sound that you're making is the same. An, in, un, right? For that reason, the rules will come under the noon sakin and tanween rules, okay? So under the noon sakin and tanween rules, guys, are 4 rules. And I'm sure every single person in this room has covered these rules before. When we were kids, we've covered these rules before. Idgham, ikhfa, iqlab, and idgham. You've heard of these. But again, you're going to be learning it in a more deeper understanding, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. Okay, so when we're going to be covering these rules, is there a specific order that we need to do it in? No. However, some scholars, they bring idgham first, other scholars bring ikhfa first. It doesn't matter. But I've brought in the most controversial of these rules first. Because I know everyone likes controversy, so let's talk about controversy, inshallah. So the first rule that we're going to be covering is iqlab. Iqlab. طيب, what is iqlab? Iqlab comes from the word qalb. Everyone knows what qalb means, right? What does qalb mean? The heart, right? Not kalb. What does kalb mean? It means a dog. Remember the first example that I gave, okay? Qalb means what? The heart. And iqlab is from the word qalb. It's got something to do with the heart. As you can see, the linguistic meaning of iqlab means to turn or to change. And when we look at the heart, it's the same thing. Qalb is a place of change. One day you're happy, one day you're sad. 1 minute you're happy, 1 minute you're sad. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, there was a dua that he used to actually read for the qalb. What's the dua? Ahsant. Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. O changer of the hearts, keep my heart firm on the religion. The words that he used, what is it? Muqallib al-qulub. He used the same 3 letters, qaf, lam, ba. Okay? Indicating that these 3 letters mean a change. From a tajweed perspective, it also means change. There will be some kind of change happening whilst we do this rule. In simple, if after a noon sakin or a tanween, the letter ba comes, what will you do? You'll do 2 things. One is you will change the noon sakin or tanween into a meme. What will you do? Change it into a what? Meme. And the second thing you're going to do is you're going to do a ghunnah. I'll give you an example. In the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm sure you've come across, says min ba'di. I'm just saying it like this. Min ba'di. Try to say how difficult it is. Min ba'di. Try it. Try and say it with the noon. Min hard. Noon and ba, they're 2 very different makhrajas. Okay? To make it easy on the tongue, try it with the meme. Mim ba'di. Isn't that easier? Because both letters mim and ba are from the letters of the lips, right? So that's the first thing that you do. So you say mim ba'di, mim ba'di. Okay, where does the controversy come in? Do you keep your mouth open or do you close it? Close it? Okay. This I'm only telling you for education purposes. Sometimes you may hear some mashayikh teaching you and telling you that when you do the iqlab, you leave your mouth opened a little bit. So you say like this, min ba'di, min ba'di. There's a little what? Gap there, can you see? Other mashayikh will tell you to say, min ba'di. I've closed the lips. Can you see the 2? One I opened, one I closed. Many of the Egyptian Qur'an, they take the first stance and saying, min ba'di. And I personally was of that opinion at one time. Alright? However, after doing research and sitting with other big scholars, I'm not going to get into the whole fiqh discussion. All I want to say is, as you are learning, is stick to the second one. Stick to the second one. If you want to find out more information, we can have a discussion outside somewhere, inshallah, okay? So, what is it? You stick to the second one. The reason why I'm telling you is you might hear someone doing it. It's fine. But in the lesson, we're teaching you in this way. Which way is it? Closing the lips. Okay, so you say it like this. Mim ba'di, mim ba'di. So if I was to ask you which rule is this, you're going to say iqlab. What is it? Iqlab. So the first thing that we learn is iqlab means to change. What are we changing? We're changing the noon sakin into a meme. We're changing the noon sakin into a meme. Okay. Here we've got the surah, Suratul Humaza. Let's see who can find the iqlab. You can shout it out. Let's see. Ahsant, very good. Kalla la yumbadhanna. Can you see? And in the Mus'haf, they give you a clue as well. They put a meme on top of the noon to show you that it's changing. So when you read it, you'll read it like this. Kalla la yumbadhanna fil hutama. Okay? La yum, not la yun with a noon, or not la yun. You close your lips. Okay? Has everyone understood that? Iqlab. So that's the first rule of the noon sakin and tanween rules. Moving on. We've got the next rule, which is the rule of idgham. So first, we've done change. Finish that. We're moving on to idgham. Idgham comes from the word adghama yudghimu, which means to join or to mix. Okay? Right? To join or to mix. طيب. How are we going to explain idgham? Very simple. If after noon sakin or tanween, okay? If after noon sakin or tanween, any of the letters of idgham come, you will join that, the letter before it, the letter before the noon sakin and tanween, with the letter after the noon sakin and tanween. So in reality, what's happened to the noon sakin tanween? You put in an X on it. Khalas, it's out of the equation. You delete it, right? So the letter before joins with what? The letter after. Okay, everything's in our head. We need to see it. We need to visualize it, isn't it? For us to visualize it, let's look at it. But in order for us to visualize, we have to understand that idgham is of two types. First we have is idgham with ghunnah. And the ghunnah, we've talked about. What does ghunnah mean? Reading from the nose, okay? And these are 6 letters. Say with me, yarmulun. Yarmulun. Excellent. Let's count it. Ya, ra, mim, lam, waw, and noon. How many letters? 6 letters. These 6 letters, if they come after the noon sakin or tanween, you will do ghunnah with it. Okay, I'll show you 2 examples for you to understand. Oh, I think I swapped it over. طيب. Idgham, here it is. Okay, examples for idgham with ghunnah. 2 examples. The first example that we have is, watch, sharran. Say it with me. Sharran. Okay, let me break it down for you all. On the ra, we have a tanween, right? Double fatha. So if it was a tanween, we would read it as sharran, right? Okay, now the rule of idgham has come in. So that means we're not going to say sharran. We're going to join it with the letter after. The sheen is going to join with the letter, the second, the ya. So sharrai, that's the first step. The second step is we're going to do ghunnah. If we do ghunnah, how are we going to do it? Watch. Sharrayyara. Sharrayyara. Okay, someone's going to ask, how do I know if I'm doing ghunnah or not? Simple. Block your nose. If you can't continue, that means you're doing ghunnah. Okay? Watch. Sharray. I can't continue. Okay? If you're reading clearly and you can continue, that means you're not reading from the nose. We need to read from the nose. Okay? Watch. Sharray. I'm not doing that purposely, by the way. Alright, okay? So if you can't continue, what happens? That means you're doing ghunnah. Fantastic. Okay? طيب. The next example, I've given an example of noon sakin and after it, a letter of idgham with ghunnah. So here, generally, if you didn't know the rule, you would read it as what? Man ya'mal. What do you say, man ya'mal? What do you say? 2 steps. First is you say, man ya'mal. And second, you do ghunnah. So how are you going to say it? Aywa. Man ya'mal. Man ya'mal. Okay? This is called idgham with ghunnah. طيب, moving on. We have also another type, which is idgham without ghunnah. So that means when you're going to do it, you're going to do the exact same, except for the last step, which was doing it with the ghunnah, right? And that is 2 letters, the letter lam and the letter ra. Okay, 2 simple letters. Here are 2 examples for you to understand. Again, in one example, I've brought the tanween, and the other example, I've got a noon sakin. So covering both the noon sakin and tanween. The first one we have is this one. Humazatil lumaza. If we didn't know the rule, we would say humazatin lumaza. Okay. Now we know the rule, we're going to join it. We're going to join the ta with the lam. Humazatil lumaza. But am I going to do ghunnah? No ghunnah. If I was to do ghunnah, then it would have been like this. Humazatil lumaza. And that's wrong. Okay? Humazatil lumaza. That's the first example. Second example we have is min rabbika. Do I say min rabbika? I cancel out the noon. I say min rabbika. Do I do ghunnah? If I did ghunnah, how would it be? Min rabbika. No, it doesn't work. Okay? So it's just min rabbika. With that being said, that's the idgham with ghunnah and idgham without ghunnah. Let me summarize the rule and then inshallah we'll move on. So we said idgham means to merge or join. Fantastic. Okay. What are we merging? What are we joining? The letter before the noon sakin and tanween with the letter after. So what's happened to the noon sakin and tanween? It's getting a cross. Khalas. It's cancelled out. Okay. طيب. Idgham is of how many types? Types. 2 types. Idgham with ghunnah and idgham without gunna. Idgham with gunna, how many letters? Six letters. What are they? Can you remember the word? Yarmulun, okay? And these letters, you do it with gunna. Example, man ya'mal. Man ya'mal. Okay, idgham without gunna, how many letters? What are the two letters? Ahsantum, lam and ra. Do you do gunna with them? What's the example? Aywa. What's the other one? Good. Mir rabbika. Mir rabbika. Fantastic. Okay. طيب. So that's today we've covered two rules, iqlab and idgham. Inshallah, after Ramadan, we'll revise these two rules and then we'll cover the next two rules, which is the ikhfa and the idhar. The ikhfa is the most important one, I would say, because ikhfa comes in the Qur'an quite a lot, and ikhfa actually beautifies the recitation, really nicely. So we'll touch on that in more detail, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, after Ramadan. Saying that, alhamdulillah, we finished 3 surahs already. Surah Al-Fatiha, Surah Al-Nas, and Surah Al-Falaq. Today we will be doing Surah Al-Ikhlas and Surah Al-Masad, inshallah. Okay? Right. Okay. So we're going to start off with Surah Al-Ikhlas. So as you know, you're going to recite with me, and then after that I'm going to break it down, and we're going to do it together, inshallah. So recite after me, bi'idhnillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد. Everyone's making that same mistake. I'll say it again, and I'll take the mistake out at the end. طيب, good. Again. قل هو الله أحد. طيب. الله الصمد. لم يلد ولم يولد. ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Okay, let's go over it verse at a time, inshallah. So we've got the first verse, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Right, let's go over the common mistakes. The first thing that I can mention is majority of you brothers read it as هُوَ اللَّهُ. What was the mistake? Excellent, very good. And we've talked about this as a common mistake. Everyone makes this. Because why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, Lafzul Jalala, here is heavy, but the waw is not heavy. So we don't say قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ. We don't say Wallahi man. Okay, what is it? No, he said Wallahi man. Okay, right? You need to show your tajweed even in the words that you use outside of reading Qur'an. Okay, so you say قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ. Straight, quick transition. Watch. Huwa. Say huwa. Yeah, smile and say huwa. Okay. Allah stays how it is. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. MashaAllah, the uncle did it better now. Allahumma barik. Fantastic. Ahad dal qalqala, right? Okay, we're testing, we're learning the rules now, so we know some of the rules. Qalqala sughra or kubra? Kubra. Why? Because end of the word. Ahsantum. So that means you can put an extra emphasis into it. Is it a light letter or is it a heavy letter? Light letter. So are we going to say ahad or ahad? Okay, now go back and say it again. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Ahsantum. Okay, طيب. Next verse. What's the common mistake here? Everyone knows it. Allahumma barik. I think that was the first thing that we talked about, yeah? Not Allah. Oh, mashallah. Uncle's got it. Allahu and not Allah. Because the lam is heavy and not the alif. Okay, so watch. Allahu Sad is heavy, Mim and Dal are light. So you have to do quick transition. So watch me.